Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in Through the Ages. The finals have been a bit disappointing for me so far. I have already 6 games finished, only 5 points. I didn't manage to win a game yet, so definitely not the outcome that I maybe hoped for. But the good news is that I still have the chance to end the finals on a positive note if I should manage to win the next two-player games, because then I would at least finish at the third position and would be part of the prize pool, so I would be very happy about that. And the first one of those two-player games will be the one against PV4. And now PV4 is already locked at the second position. However, for the most part of the game, that wasn't clear for him. So yeah, he also still had a lot of motivation to do his best in this game. And now, without further ado, we are going to take a look at the game. I'm playing this game in the second position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that there is some culture synergy in the game, but in contrast to the game before against Marta Pêcheur, this time it is more in H2 than maybe in H3. We have Bach and Gaudi, there's no Shakespeare however, but there's Darwin, so 3 of the 4 big culture leaders are in the game in H2. In H3 we have at least Marlene Dietrich, but there's no Hollywood, no internet, however there's also Gandhi to potentially hide behind, so as going for a lot of culture production could potentially work out quite well, but there's not a big payoff with the Hollywood. There's the space flight, also Sid Meier for some lab synergy, Marie Curie maybe as well, but not the most lab synergy. We have the Manhattan Project. Then in H2 we have a lot of strong wonders with the ocean liner service. There's the Suez Canal and James Cook, so going for some colonies could be quite strong potentially. The Harvard College is there as well. We have the 2 science leaders with Nobel and Newton, no military action leader, but 2 of them in H1 with Joan of Arc and Jan Žižka. There are also the 2 lab and printing press leaders with Leonardo and Gutenberg, and then Genghis Khan and Barbarossa can also help with the strength, and Barbarossa maybe also in a nice colonization game. We have the Silk Road but no Universitas, Forbidden City but no St. Peter's Basilica, Amici Castle but no Great Wall, and in HA we have the Acropolis, which could potentially be an interesting wonder with there being Gandhi and also those strong H2 culture leaders. PV4 starts the game and he takes Hippocrates. He could have also taken the library, but maybe it's nice to leave himself open because he could still get the pyramids and also the Acropolis is still in the game, so it's maybe better to just take Hippocrates, especially because the other leaders will maybe only be available for 2 civil actions at his next turn. And as you can see, I actually just took the Engineering Genius A, and I think there are definitely some different options available because there are 2 strong wonders that I could take. I could take the library and even another one of those HA yellow cards, which could potentially be strong. I could just take the pyramids, which now will be available for PV4, but at the end I went with the Engineering Genius. If I just take the library and maybe one of those yellow cards, then I think it's quite strong for PV4 that he gets the pyramids and the Engineering Genius. The pyramids is a wonder where it's quite beneficial if you can finish it very quickly, and the Engineering Genius makes it more likely that with the help of the developments it will maybe be able for him to finish it very quickly. So I didn't like it that he has the chance to take the Engineering Genius and the pyramid, so I could maybe just take the pyramids away. However, then there are 5 new cards revealed, meaning it is quite likely that the Acropolis will actually come out of the deck, so PV4 could just go for Hippocrates, build a mine, increase his population, take the Engineering Genius, and with me already having committed to the pyramids, he could then maybe just go for the Acropolis. I could of course hope that maybe the Acropolis doesn't come out of the deck, but I didn't like it too much, both those scenarios where PV4 gets the Engineering Genius and then either the pyramids for certain, or maybe just has the chance to wait for the Acropolis, and so at the end I just took the Engineering Genius for myself. Now, I was hoping that the Acropolis will come out of the deck. PV4 could of course deny the Acropolis, the pyramids will be discarded, but very likely the Acropolis will be in 3, so that would be very costly, and even if it is on 2, where maybe he would be willing to do it, I think it would still be a bit costly, and I could either go for Hanging Gardens or maybe just hope to get an H1 wonder that I can work on. And if PV4 just goes for the pyramids, then I think it's fine. At least he doesn't have the Engineering Genius, so maybe it will take at least a little while until he can finish it, and I have a good chance that I might get the Acropolis in a game with those culture leaders, and then maybe Gandhi and Marlene. I think the Acropolis definitely has some potential, so at the end the Engineering Genius was my pick here. And then I can either go for Boudica or Hammurabi maybe at my next turn, which are both very strong options. Then PV4, first of all, I was very happy to see that the Acropolis actually did appear on the row, so that is maybe quite nice for me. And now PV4 will go for Hippocrates, builds a mine, increases population, and will go for the pyramids. Maybe he could have done something like taking stockpile, let the Acropolis stay on 3, then maybe it would be too costly for me to take it, but I then again could let it stay on 2 for PV4, so it would be a bit costly to take it for him. However, I would not have the Acropolis, so maybe it could be an interesting option, but I think just having the pyramids is also very strong, and there is no Hollywood or internet, so just having a big economy maybe also has some nice potential, and the pyramids is also very nice to have. There's additional civil actions maybe make it quite a bit more easily possible to maybe go for a little bit of a denial here and there, have a bit more control over the card row. Now it's my turn, and the main decision for this turn was if I want to go for Hammurabi or maybe for Boudica. And I think both are very fine choices. Normally maybe Hammurabi is a bit better, but Boudica can also generate quite some nice value, and also I will go for the Acropolis, and it has a little bit of an anti-synergy with Hammurabi, because with Hammurabi, if possible, it's really strong to do an early revolution to an H1 government farm, but of course with the Acropolis you really want to develop them peacefully with the discount, so that's a bit of a small anti-synergy. And also there's the Suez Canal and James Cook in the game, so going for a colonization game could be quite interesting. There is even a copy of cartography coming down the road, and so with going for Hammurabi I will have less draws, and it's less likely that I will be able to make something possible. However, if I go for Boudica, then it's very likely that maybe the cartography would actually stay on 2 civil actions potentially for me at the next turn, and then I might not be able to take it anyway. And Hammurabi is just quite nice to play, having a lot of civil actions, and with that having a lot of options. So at the end I went for Hammurabi, but I think going for Boudica might also be perfectly fine here. And then with my last civil action that I have, thanks to Hammurabi, I will take the urban growth so that I can save some resources in the second lab immediately. I will draw the barbarians, which maybe could be interesting, but with PV4 having the pyramids and me very likely getting the Acropolis, I might be the one having more culture, so maybe it's better to not seed it into the deck. PV4 will build one step of the pyramids and then takes the urban growth A and urban growth 1. Doesn't build a second lab yet, with that he can finish the pyramids at the next turn guaranteed. Maybe leaves himself open for potential printing presses for a little bit. There is at least Gaudi and Darwin in the game, no Shakespeare however, and just takes a bunch of additional resources. Now it's my turn. I will go for the Acropolis. Of course, there's also a Forbidden City coming down the road, but the Acropolis is just so strong, and I can actually start working in the Acropolis and then maybe still have the chance to go for the Forbidden City at the next turn if PV4 doesn't go for it himself. And now after taking the Acropolis, I will want to build a second lab. There's no printing press coming down the road, and with that I just want to get the science production going as quickly as possible. Also, I made a decision to take the cartography, which maybe won't be that valuable for me, but there's still a chance that even with having Hammurabi I could maybe draw 1 or 2 colonies, and then it could maybe still be an interesting card to have. But it's also a bit of a denial, because maybe PV4 doesn't go for it, but he could have already drawn a strong colony, and with having the cartography in hand I just make it a lot harder for him to go for any colonies, making it that maybe the Suez Canal won't be a strong option for him, and maybe it could potentially still end up being a nice option for me. So with that colonization synergy in the game, I think it might be worth it to spend a 1 civil action to take the cartography. And then after that I will build 1 step on the Acropolis, and with that I even have still 1 civil action left thanks to Hammurabi. I could just increase my population, or I could maybe take the warfare, but I have already the cartography in hand. I don't want to take another blue technology. With Hammurabi you have to be a little bit careful about your hand space, and so at the end I just decided to go very early into consumption, which is definitely not ideal, but at least I have a free population. With the Acropolis it is a bit painful to miss out on a free religion, and yeah, there's also a frugality coming down the road. I have some free civil actions at the next turn, so maybe I could take that to make up for the food that I miss out on with going that early into consumption. And I could have maybe also, instead of the cartography, grabbed 1 of the cards for 2 and then stayed out of consumption, but I don't think that any of those is really that much worth it for me. So at the end I just increased my population, and then if PV4 doesn't go for the Forbidden City, maybe I can just take it. I think it's an interesting combination with the Acropolis, because with the Acropolis you kind of like to go for an H1 government farm, and the additional civil action from the Forbidden City makes the H1 government farm then even more viable. So I think it's an interesting combination, and maybe something that I would like to go for if PV4 doesn't take it away. PV4 then seeds the first event. The development of trade routes is revealed. He will finish the pyramids, builds the second lab. Thanks to the 1 additional resource from the trade routes he can do that. That gets him out of corruption, and with the last 2 civil actions he will actually go for the Forbidden City himself, meaning I can't go for it. He will now have a lot of civil actions once he's finished it, which can be quite strong, but on the other hand, he will invest a lot into those two wonders and doesn't get any culture reduction out of it, which sometimes can be a bit problematic in two-player games, but also the many civil actions definitely can also be quite strong. So, no. And also he takes the option away for me to go for it, and I might have wanted to go for it because now I have maybe a bit of trouble to spend my civil actions. As you can see, after finishing the Acropolis, I have still 4 civil actions left with Hammurabi, and I can't really go for any upgrades or just spend them on improving my economy. I mainly have to just take some cards. But it's maybe also not too bad. There are 3 yellow cards in a row, and I will just end up taking all of them. And now, I could have also taken a card like Bread and Circuses, maybe the Knights, and for the Bread and Circuses there's Darwin and Pierre, also Gaudi in the game, so it could be a fine Bread and Circuses game. Yeah, and at the end I rather wanted to have the other cards in hand because all of them I can relatively easily get out of my hand. The Frugality I can use it the next turn. With the Urban Growth I can maybe build a 3rd lab or maybe a Religion at some point for the Acropolis. And also I wanted to have this copy of Breakthrough. First of all, if I take another card for 1 civil action, then I have to develop the Cartography to make space in my hand. And also giving PV4 the Breakthrough for 1 civil action, with him having neither a Science Wonder nor a Leader and a lot of civil actions, I think would be a very strong card for him. So I at this point also took it away for 2 civil actions, and then at the next turn I have a full hand, but I can just use the Acropolis or maybe the Urban Growth to make space in my hand. I could have also taken the Irrigation instead of the Breakthrough, but there's another copy coming. There's an Ocean Liner service, the Selective Breeding, so there are still some ways to get more population going. I have an interesting draw here, the Vast Territory. There's no Columbus, but there is the Colonization Synergy. I have the Cartography in hand, so maybe that could be interesting to seed it into the deck at some point. PV4 will increase his population 2 times, that gets him out of corruption. Then he goes for Leonardo, takes the Irrigation and builds 1 step of the Forbidden City, lets the Iron stay in 2 civil actions for me. Also the Code of Laws will be available, so it will be difficult for me to grab both of those cards, and then he might just maybe get the Iron for 1 civil action at the next turn. And no, interesting that he goes for Leonardo, but maybe even if the alchemies are late, he can start maybe generating him a bit of resources, and then he's guaranteed to get 1 copy of alchemy, or maybe even printing press with the ignored unhappy workers from the Forbidden City to get some value out of Leonardo. This turn I will first of all make space in my hand with using the Frugality, and then I will go for the Code of Laws, because I think it's very important in 2-player games to not be stuck on 4 civil actions. Maybe for PV4 it's not even the most interesting technology, because he has already a lot of civil actions, but he also will maybe have some additional science production with Leonardo, and could still go for it, having even more civil actions. I think the Code of Laws is just too important to grab, and then I can't really go for the Iron. Of course I could potentially go for it, developing Code of Laws, taking the Iron, building a Warrior, but I don't think it's necessary, because the other copy isn't in the row yet, and PV4 will very likely just go for this copy himself, and I can wait for the second copy. And now, after going for the Code of Laws, I also want to develop it, and as you can see, I actually didn't use the Breakthrough. The reason for that is that maybe I will end up going for the Silk Road at the next turn, and then I maybe still have the chance to get an additional science out of this copy of Breakthrough. And with that, I made a decision to actually not use it, hoping that I won't have any issues with spending my science on something. Of course, at the next turn, maybe I could regret it. Maybe there could be an Iron or something in a row, and I maybe don't have enough science to go for it. So maybe I could also just use it and be a bit more flexible. But I really like the option of maybe just going for the Silk Road at the next turn, and with that, I at the end made a decision to actually just keep it in hand. Then I also still have corruption issues. I can't increase my population again. If I use the urban growth, sadly it's also not enough to get out of corruption, so I made a decision to build an urban building actually without using the urban growth, and I made a decision to build a 3rd lab. Thanks to the Acropolis, I have an increased urban building limit. I'm going up to 3 science production now, still missing 1 to maybe go for an Iron if it is available, but I could, for example, also go for the alchemy, but I think the Silk Road might be the more interesting card for me. And yeah, and then there was a very interesting decision for the last civil action. It was actually the thing that I considered the most, and depending on my decision, it would have also maybe changed if I used this Breakthrough or not, because I can either just take this Breakthrough breakthrough, a very efficient card. I can get it for only one civil action, also making sure to take it away from PV4, because if I don't take it away, PV4 is actually a very efficient turn. You can just go for the iron, develop it, score one resource with Leonardo, can then go for 2 upgrades and has one civil action left, and then he can spend that last civil action perfectly just on taking the breakthrough. So it would be kind of nice to take it away, because then the last civil action could still be nicely used, maybe just to increase his population. That's also fine, but I think the breakthrough is an interesting card for him, which is why I took this copy also for 2 civil actions at the turn before. Partly maybe also, of course, because it's nice for myself, but also because I didn't like it to give it to PV4 to 1 civil action. But there's another card that I thought could be very interesting to have, and that is the Theocracy. I have now the Code of Law, so I'm on 5 civil actions already. I have the Acropolis, I have this urban growth, so that I can maybe build a religion already the next turn, maybe even with the Silk Road bonus potentially. And then I could go for a very cheap Theocracy. And when we take a look at the remaining leaders, we see that now that Genghis Khan will be discarded, there is still Joan of Arc left in the game, and I think she could potentially be quite a strong leader for me. Because if I maybe build a religion with the urban growth, go for the Theocracy, then I will have 1 additional strength from the Acropolis, 1 from the Theocracy, and if I then have Joan of Arc, I will have 2 more strength. If I maybe develop the Cartography, go for the Vast Territory, I would be at 6 strength without having spent any resources or population into military units, and with PV4 being on 2 military actions, it could actually get a bit threatening for him. And maybe he has to even invest into the military without me really investing that much into the military. Also, the additional military action from Joan of Arc would be quite nice if I maybe indeed want to go for some colony play potentially. So having the Theocracy could be quite nice for Joan of Arc, but also generally the Happy Face, just getting it that cheap with the Acropolis. If I don't take it now, it could be that the monarchy is taken away by PV4. The monarchy would be a perfectly fine government form for him with having already that many additional civil actions, and then I don't know when I will get value out of the Acropolis, when I will be able to go for a government form. Not being able to increase my military count efficiently could make it a lot harder to maybe try something with going for those colonies, and so I kind of liked it to have the option for the Theocracy. However, Joan of Arc is not only the only strong leader available. I think another potentially strong one could be Gutenberg. Of course, if I get a nice tactic, Shishka could also be fine, but I think he is the leader that I was looking the least for in this position. But Gutenberg could be very interesting with having gone for 3 labs already. I could get a lot of actions out of him if I maybe go for the alchemy, develop it, and then go for some slow upgrades. I could maybe get a lot of value out of him, and then maybe just go for Bach in H2. That's a very clean transition, a very powerful combination, and so that could also be strong. So maybe I could just hope to go for Gutenberg, but also if I go for Gutenberg, the Theocracy could still be quite valuable, and so at the end I actually went for the Theocracy, even though it means leaving the breakthrough for PV4, but it was a very close decision, and maybe I could also just take the breakthrough, hoping to either get the monarchy or maybe just waiting for an H2 government form. At the next turn I could maybe go for the Silk Road, build a step, build an HA lab even for free with the urban growth, develop the Theocracy, and then I think I might have even still 1 civil action left that I could maybe use to increase my population. So I think that could be quite interesting. And then if I have Acropolis, those religions, the religion, Theocracy, Joan of Arc, I also generate a lot of culture while still maintaining improving my economy also a bit, and getting a culture lead, putting some pressure on PV4 military wise, and so I thought the Theocracy offers enough benefits here to take it even over the breakthrough. Then I keep the Dark Ages and the Vast Territory in hand, also to draw the Reign of Terror, which could be an interesting event if I indeed end up going for Joan of Arc. PV4 will go for the iron, that was as expected. He will go for 2 upgrades, and now sadly can use the last civil action to take the breakthrough, which I think is quite a strong option for him. Also, the second copy of iron did appear, and I was not too happy about its position on the row, because its positioning means that if I want to go for the Silk Road now, the iron will actually be discarded. So if I want to have the Silk Road and the iron, I need to take both, but that it's quite costly. I could increase my population to get out of corruption, but then it just feels a bit inefficient. I, with taking 2 cards from the row, might also lose Hammurabi before my next turn, meaning I don't get a civil action back when electing my leader, meaning the Silk Road might get quite delayed, and there are a lot of interesting H2 wonders, so if the iron maybe would have stayed in the deck and I can't go for it anyway, need to spend my civil actions on something, the Silk Road I think could have been a very nice option, but now out of the sudden the Silk Road didn't appear that great any longer, but maybe there's some other interesting stuff that I can do. As you can see, I seeded a Reign of Terror into the deck, because I will go for the Theocracy, maybe for the Cartography, and I was just hoping that with that many additional strength sources, I hopefully will have an advantage with fighting for the Reign of Terror. The development of religion is revealed, which is quite nice for me. With having the Theocracy, I can take the free religion, I will increase my population to get out of corruption. And no, then the question is what to do, and I don't necessarily need to take the iron this turn, because if I don't take the Silk Road I can also just wait to get it for 1 civil action cheaper at the next turn. I don't have enough science to go for it this turn, because of not having used the breakthrough the turn before, which backfires now a little bit, but it's maybe also not too bad, and at the end I made a decision to use this urban growth to build even another religion, increasing my culture production. I can then go for the Theocracy for only 1 science, which is quite cheap. Then I have actually 5 science now after using the breakthrough for the iron, but I don't have enough civil action left to go for an upgrade. I will then take the reserves, which is quite nice because it might allow me to go ahead and get an additional population out. And then I will have 2 civil actions left, and it was a decision here between taking the Engineering Genius or this copy of Alchemy. The Engineering Genius would be quite nice to have for myself, because it could make it a lot more easily possible to go for something like Ocean Liner Service, maybe Suez Canal if I still go for those colonies. Harvard College could be strong as well. However, if I take the Engineering Genius, then PV4 very likely wants to go for a copy of Alchemy. He wants to do this either way, but with the Engineering Genius taken away, this copy of Alchemy will be on 1 civil action, and I think PV4 would then go for this copy of Alchemy, removing the option from me to go for Gutenberg, meaning, Gutenberg is on the row now, Joan of Arc is still in the deck, so I know that I get Gutenberg for 1 at the next turn. I don't know how nice it will be possible for me to actually go for Joan of Arc, so at this point I thought that maybe it could be very strong to actually go for Gutenberg. And now that I got a free religion, I have actually 8 science at the next turn, meaning at the next turn if I take a copy of Alchemy now, I could develop it for with Gutenberg for only 3 science, and then I still have just exactly enough science left to also go for the iron, meaning I can start some iron production, and just along the way I can also start some alchemy upgrades with Gutenberg. I think that is a very nice way on how to use Gutenberg, doing his upgrades, but at the same time getting some other upgrades going so that you don't lose tempo and still get a lot of value out of Gutenberg with the discounts and culture and free civil actions that you get. And so I think Gutenberg has a lot of potential here, and with that I was actually willing to let the Engineering Genius be available for PV4, which he sadly can very nicely use in the Forbidden City, and instead secured myself a copy of Alchemy. The good news is that very likely the age won't end before my next turn, because PV4 very likely wants to go for the Alchemy, and if he goes for that he needs a bunch of civil actions to get out of corruption, and then he can't really end the age. If he ends the age, then at least it means that he doesn't go for the alchemy, meaning he very likely won't be able to use this urban growth, misses out on a lot of science, so that would be quite costly. Of course, I would lose Hammurabi then, don't get a civil action back, so it would be quite costly for me as well, but I thought that that would be a fine for me, and with that I maybe can just go for Gutenberg, go for the alchemy and some iron upgrades, and that could then be end up being quite a strong position for me. I draw a colonization card, which could be nice in case I go for the vast territory, also the raiders. PV4 will go for the alchemy, goes for an upgrade, and then takes the engineering genius and increases his population. Interestingly, he didn't go for another upgrade of either iron or alchemy, instead makes sure to have already this population increased, which is interesting. Maybe it could have been fine to also go for an upgrade, but maybe he wanted to have some free civil actions depending on what his plans are for the next turn. And with him going for the alchemy, it also means that the age doesn't end before my next turn, meaning I have still Hammurabi and I can get a civil action back when going for Gutenberg now. And I will now go for Gutenberg, using the military action from Hammurabi when electing him, being back at 5 civil actions. I will use Gutenberg this turn to develop the alchemy, and then I can still just go for the iron, go for 2 upgrades, leaving me at 1 last civil action that I have left. And now for that I can potentially play the reserves for food, but it's unnecessary to commit to that with not knowing what developments are still coming. So it's either between drama or Richland here, and I think here the drama is the better decision, because there are some interesting leaders for it in the game, especially Bach and Marlene, and while there are 2 copies of operas, and with my iron production going for opera might be fine, I also don't know when those will be available. I might stay in Theocracy for a little bit longer, and then I might have some other stuff to do in H2 as well. So just having the drama in hand, not being forced to take an opera, having it available as soon as I need it, has just quite some advantages. And also if I take the rich land, the monarchy will fall down to 1 civil action for PV4, and it is quite late, but it could still be nice to maybe at least take it in hand as a backup plan for him, so that he isn't too much dependent on the H2 government forms, has a way to get the 3rd military action, and if it stays in 2 it's quite a bit more costly for him to take it, and he is then more dependent on the H2 government forms. So also this I think is a good reason here to take the drama instead of the rich land. I keep the vast territory in the Dark Ages in hand, but I didn't want to seed the vast territory or the raiders into the deck yet, because PV4 has some free population, so I didn't want to commit to even more strength events, as he maybe, and now that I don't have Jin of R, could overtake me in strength if he wants to. And for the vast territory, it could just be maybe revealed too quickly. At the next turn I don't have enough science for cartography. Maybe there's some other stuff that I want to do, so I just didn't want to commit to any of those events yet, but kept the vast territory in hand as it still has quite some potential. Then H2 starts, and PV4 gets a yellow token back from Hippocrates. He this turn can finish the Forbidden City, goes for an upgrade to Alchemy, takes the Rich Land, and takes even another copy of Rich Land, being potentially able to save quite a lot of resources. Also he has just enough science to go for both Republic and Constitutional Monarchy. Now it is my turn, and as you can see I just grab Bach here for 3 civil actions, which is quite costly, but Bach in 2-player games is just so strong. I have the drama already in hand, I have Gutenberg for now, I can just use him as long as I want to, and then immediately switch to Bach when I have finished going for those upgrades, and then I can maybe generate quite a big culture lead, and Bach would also be quite a nice way for PV4 to maybe start some culture production. He can also still go for Gaudi, maybe Darwin, but it's not clear when those will be available, and Bach maybe just has the biggest potential out of all of them, and so even it is quite a bit costly, I don't have too much to do this turn anyway. Could have still used my civil actions differently, but at the end I went for Bach. However, this means that I actually won't go for the irrigation this turn. I could still go for it, use Gutenberg now for an upgrade, grab the irrigation, but I think it would be quite costly, and with the ocean liner service being the game and there being 2 ways how I can maybe get more population going, I at the end was willing to take the risk, but that of course can potentially backfire quite a bit. At least with the reserves in hand I have a way to get at least 1 more population out, but no. But if I take the irrigation for 2 and then there's an early selective breeding, it's just could be quite a bit of a waste of civil actions, and I don't have the most of them, so I instead just was hoping that one of those options will be available for me, but there's of course the danger that maybe PV4 can deny both of them potentially. So I go for Bach, and then I could just go for an upgrade with Gutenberg, maybe for 1 iron upgrade, but there's 1 card in a row that I thought could still potentially be quite valuable for me, and that is the masonry, which I will go for, develop it, and then I will save some resource from there instead of getting 1 additional resource with going already for the iron production this turn. And I think the masonry has quite some potential here. I didn't upgrade any buildings yet, so I can save 3 resources when going for all of those alchemy upgrades, making them very cheap now together with Gutenberg. When I then maybe go for dramas and upgrade those religions to drama, I can save some resources. So the masonry saves me a lot of resources, but with the Suez Cannon, the ocean liner service being here, could also save me some civil actions, could make it quite a bit more efficiently for me to go for those wonders. So I was willing to go for the masonry, even though it means missing out on 1 iron upgrade this turn. But it could have been also a fine turn to just go for the last upgrade, maybe take the cultural heritage or something. I draw another colonization card. I still didn't see the colony because, as you can see, the navigation is coming down the row. PV4 has a lot of science production. He knows about the colonization synergy, and as long as I don't know if he takes the navigation, I didn't want to commit to the vast territory. However, now I have an additional colonization card in hand, making it maybe more viable again to seed it into the deck. PV4 will go for irrigation, doesn't want to wait for selective breeding or anything, and he can now use his rich lands very nicely because he will not only go for 2 upgrades, but even build an additional farm, go for all the upgrades, and then also upgrade his mine, meaning he has now quite some strong economy going, has enough to get a population out every turn, enough food production, so that's quite strong, and with the iron production he can maybe improve his position even more with going for some H2 wonders potentially. And no, so with that I think he has quite a solid position, but he's falling quite a bit behind in culture. Gutenberg is also adding 2 culture production every turn, and I already have Bach in hand. So if I also can at least not fall behind too much in economy, maybe I could get an advantage just because how easy it is for me to generate a very big culture lead. My biggest worry is of course now that maybe I could miss out on a way to get more population going. That was the risk that I have taken with not taking the irrigation. And so far there has been no selective breeding or ocean liner service in a row, so I still have to wait for them. Also for PV4 now it's of course very important when he maybe gets the government forms. That is also a thing that he is waiting for, so now in H2 it could be quite interesting and quite important when those things will be revealed. If PV4 gets the government forms early and I don't get a way to get more population, it could be very tricky for me. If I have the chance to grab the ocean liner service and PV4 has to wait quite long to get a government form, then I could have quite the advantage. So I think those cards might be very interesting and very important to see when those will be on the row. This turn I can go for another upgrade with Gutenberg. Also I can this turn finally complete my iron upgrades. I don't have the most hand space, I don't want to elect Bach yet, I don't want to commit to any of those technologies. I could take the navigation away and start seeding the vast territory, but I was not willing to, with my limited hand space, to do this, and rather was hoping that maybe PV4 just won't go for the navigation, making it that maybe at the next turn I can start seeding the vast territory into the deck. And as I can't take that many cards in hand, I just took the breakthrough and then played the reserves for food and increased my population. I could have taken 2 yellow cards for 1 civil action, but I have already decent resource production. I can't that easily use the efficient upgrade or the urban growth, especially if I don't get a selective breeding. And with that, I think the breakthrough is just a more important card for me, especially if I want to go for an upgraded government form at some point. And also I think it would be quite an efficient card to take for PV4 for 1 civil action. So at the end I just took the breakthrough and already made it that I have more population. Of course it could be that now something like development of agriculture is revealed, making it that I'm stuck on 2 food again, and maybe playing resource for food wouldn't have been necessary then, but I still made a decision to commit to those actions already. At the next turn, it could potentially be quite interesting if there is no selective breeding or ocean liner service in the row to maybe just take and finish the Harvard College, leaving me with 1 resource, which is just enough to go for 1 last upgrade with Gutenberg. I keep the colony in the 2 colonization cards. I draw now also a tactic, the Napoleonic army, and also a war over territory. There is neither a food solution nor a government form on the row yet. PV4 interestingly will go for Darwin this turn, and he actually grabs the cannons from the 3 civil actions area, of course only for 2 civil actions because of having Darwin, which seems a bit costly of course at the first look, because he could also just wait to get 1 for 1 civil action at the next turn, but maybe he doesn't have the nicest way to use his actions this turn, and as you will see at the end of his turn, after taking the patriotism and the navigation, which I was not too happy to see, because now I can't that easily seed the vast territory into the deck without a fear of PV4 winning it, and now the second copy of cannons will actually stay on 2 civil actions for me. So while he had to pay an additional price this turn, maybe he didn't have anything better to do anyway, and now at least he forces me, if I want to have this copy, to also spend 2 civil actions, and with me being only on 5 civil actions, that might be the bigger cost for me than for him. So an interesting turn by him. Also Darwin, it's maybe not ideal with having the religion, but for now he has still a lot of free population, so that should be fine. And if he just goes for organized religion as an upgrade, it is fine. If he gets team sports, it's fine. So Darwin produces him 2 culture from now on, and if he maybe gets journalism, then he has the potential to improve his culture production quite a bit, and also his economy of course. Now it is my turn. I again don't push now that PV4 has taken the navigation. The vast territory, of course, could be a very an interesting way for me to get help for the population, but yeah, I was just too afraid that PV4 maybe at the end has can win it more easily, especially if he sees me committing to the cartography, then he might just commit to the navigation. This turn I can go for one last upgrade with Gutenberg, and then I will also elect Bach this turn just to get the additional culture reduction already. But there was one thing that I was actually considering, and that is to deny the journalisms from the row. That is quite expensive. I could potentially, instead of going for the upgrade, use Gutenberg this turn, then maybe go for the upgrade at the next turn. So I could maybe do a somewhat fine turn and take the journalism. But yeah, I also have to maybe just to take it in hand and the cannons, elect Bach to make space in my hand. Because the journalisms, I will take the cannons now, so PV4 with Darwin will take them for 1. And yes, a lot of free population and resources with Darwin. I think that's a very strong technology, especially in 2-player games. And I think it could potentially be worth it to take it away. However, maybe PV4 could then get a strategy. If he maybe has some military cards, maybe has fortifications or something, then I have just spent a lot of civil actions on something that I don't really need. And then PV4 maybe finds another way to threaten me. So I was a bit afraid of the potential that this journalism might have for PV4, but at the end I thought that denying it is too expensive, but I actually considered it, because if I take it away, then PV4 maybe doesn't have the nicest options to actually compete peacefully, is maybe a bit forced into the military, but with me not knowing if I actually have the chance to get this Napoleonic army going, with not knowing if I get a rifleman or not. It's also dangerous to maybe force PV4 into the military, as for the moment, with having no population income and no guarantee tactic that I can use, it could also backfire quite a bit for me if he has some ways to threaten a bit of military. So instead I use Gutenberg to go for this upgrade to alchemy. I will take the cannons, I will elect Bach, because that also gives me a nice option to get out of corruption. Going for the Harvard College doesn't work that nicely now that I had to take the cannons for 2 civil actions, and it would have been also a bit of a downside if I go for it, that it makes it even more expensive for me to go for the ocean liner. So it's maybe not too bad to miss out on it, especially because I have some fine science production already. And then I can go for the drama this turn, build 1, go up to 9 culture production, and then I take the cavalryman. I could have also gone for an upgrade already, getting even more culture reduction, but I have the Napoleonic army, and now the chance to take the cavalryman for 1. PV4 with Darwin could easily deny them, so I think it's worth it to spend a civil action to take those cavalrymen. Then I keep the tactic, the colony, and the colonization card in hand, but for now I'm not sure if I will end up seeding into the deck. PV4 will seed, the development of crafts is revealed, giving him additional resource, and he indeed will go for the journalism, develops it, builds 1, develops the cannons, builds 1, sadly with that gets stronger than me, which could be a bit bad with the Reign of Terror coming. I was really not happy about that event being in the deck now, with me having not a way to get more population going. That could be a very, very painful event, so no, that could be bad. Also PV4 takes the Engineering Genius, because maybe he could still get the Ocean Liner service, and with that, that makes it quite a bit cheaper. Now it's my turn. As you can see, I actually seed the Crime Wave into the deck, because this turn there's still no Ocean Liner service, still no selective breeding, so the question is, how can I spend my actions efficiently? I can't just really take a lot of cards. And then there's one card in a row that is maybe important to me, that's the Rifleman. I don't have a lot else to do, so I will develop the Rifleman, go for an upgrade, so I will be stronger, meaning if I seed now, I am stronger, and the event deck is flipped already, meaning that either PV4 has to skip seeding, which is at least a bit beneficial for me. And if he then doesn't get stronger, I might have the chance to still win the Reign of Terrors, even though the Crime Wave at this point is maybe looking more like it could backfire. It's also not the biggest event to lose on, so I was willing to seed it into the deck. Opening the Development of Warfare, which I sadly can't use, but PV4, depending on what tactic he has, maybe also doesn't want to have. If he has something like Fortifications or Mobile Artillery, but he has at least the option to use it. And then this turn I said I will go for the Rifleman, making sure now that I can go for the Napoleonic army. I will have a lot of culture production, a big culture lead, even though it might not be that big now that PV4 has Darwin and the journalisms, but still it could be very important to maybe be safe in the military side and being able to protect my culture lead. And so I will go for the Rifleman, will go for this upgrade, and with my last civil action I will actually go for an upgrade to drama, increasing my culture reduction even more. I could have also taken a copy of Frugality or Reserves, Um, but yeah, at the end I made a decision against it. The frugality, if I get the ocean liner service, might not really do that much, and I have to be careful about hand space. The reserves is a bit inefficient, and I just don't have enough food for it to allow me to get an additional population. Then using it for the resources is a bit inefficient, so instead I just did the civil action already, get more culture production going, and then I was hoping that maybe PvP4 would just seed, and with that allow me to not lose to the Reign of Terror. I again this turn I will discard the colony, as now it would take a while until it will be revealed. Instead I actually kept the politics of strength, because if I get some food production I have at least a tactic. Who knows, maybe there is something possible. I think the other event was the terrorism, which definitely should end up being very bad for me. PvP4 doesn't see it, he will go for the architecture. There's still no selective breeding, still no ocean liner service, but also still no republic or constitutional monarchy. So all those cards that would be very important for PvP4 and for me are not appearing yet. And no, PvP4 will, now that he can't go for any government form, will go for the architecture, which is also quite a strong card for him. It save him a lot of resources and also civil actions potentially if he still wants to go for the ocean liner service, maybe to deny it from me. And he will build a second journalism, is now 9 culture production, 8 science production. So I was a bit afraid and also not too happy seeing this defensive army. PvP4 took the free warrior, and with having the tactics, sadly he can increase the strength this turn without any effort basically, which I was not too happy to see, because I can't really get stronger now and I might get hit by the Reign of Terror soon, which would be a bit of an annoying event for me. Also again, it will be very interesting to see what cards will appear now. And as you can see, sadly still no ocean liner service or selective breeding, which gets a bit problematic, because I have spent my actions maybe already not the most efficiently. I mean, going for the rifleman was important, but now this turn it really starts to get quite difficult for me to actually spend my actions efficiently, and it would have been quite nice to maybe now just take the ocean liner service or go for the selective breeding, but of course that was the risk when I didn't take the irrigation earlier on. And so my plan here is to just go for the opera. That will get me out of corruption. It will increase my culture production by quite a bit when I upgrade one religion to it and go for an upgrade from drama to opera. Gets me out of corruption, increase my culture production, so at least I get even better in that regard, and I spend my actions somehow instead of just taking some cards. I think, of course, I could just take Rev Idea and Wave, but I don't really need those cards at the moment, so I think it's a lot better to just invest into the opera, even though I have already the drama. However, there was the option to maybe implement a constitutional monarchy into the turn. If I don't take it, it will be available for PvP4, but the Republic will be available for him anyway, so it's not that much about denial and more about securing it for myself, making it that I am not stuck on 5 civil actions in H3, making it that I can a lot more easily take some cards, making it that I actually can potentially just take and finish the ocean liner service at my next turn. However, the ocean liner service will also then guaranteed be on the row for PvP4, meaning he might just take it away, and with actually taking the Conmon, it also gets more likely that he can actually take and finish the ocean liner service at the next turn, because if it stays in the 3 civil actions area, he can take it for 5 civil actions. Before that he could, if I don't go for the Conmon, develop it, still has 6 civil actions left, and then he could take the ocean liner service but not finish it, meaning it gets a bit more costly for him to deny it. He has already some fine food production. I think it's still strong for him to get the ocean liner service with having the engineering genius and the architecture, but at least it gets a bit painful having to spend that many civil actions into it. And if I take the Conmon now, there are 2 ways how PvP4 can actually take and finish it. The first one, of course, if the ocean liner service falls down to the 2 civil action area, but there's also a second way. If the Republic is revealed, falls down into the 2 civil action area, PvP4 can take it, develop it, actually has 7 civil actions left after this, and then he could even take and finish the ocean liner service, even if it is then there on the row. So at the end I didn't go for the Conmon because it's also late in H2. There might be an H3 government form revealed relatively early, then I also might regret it having spent that many civil actions, and also I don't really deny anything from PvP4. Maybe a bit of military options, because if I only leave him the Republic, then maybe if he doesn't go for the strategy, uh, because he maybe wants to deny the ocean liner service. I can maybe lock him down in a few military actions, so it could potentially be interesting. But the problem is, if I go for the conmon, I don't get out of corruption actually. I'm missing one civil action, so I'm missing out on a bit of culture reduction, missing out on some resources, and at the end I made a decision to just stay on theocracy for now. Went for the opera, upgrade one religion to it, upgraded one drama to it, and even upgraded another drama to it, putting me at 16 culture reduction, at least increasing my culture lead, and hopefully at the next turn I will then either be able to go for the ocean liner service. There's a chance now at least that it will stay in the deck, and the selective breeding, hopefully one of those options will be available for me, but going for those will require a lot of civil actions. I might not be that flexible. The Reign of Terror might hit me quite heavily, so while I have a big culture lead, and of course that is also looking quite threatening for PV4, I also was quite a bit afraid of my position maybe losing a bit of steam, having a lot of population issues, and so at the end I was not sure how much I actually liked my position here, but at least I have this big culture reduction, and it is putting quite some pressure on PV4, and at least I have a tactic to potentially defend myself, but at the moment I don't have the population, and that could potentially be problematic. I will draw some more cards. The fortifications tactic could potentially also still end up being interesting. And now there are all the interesting cards revealed. Republic, selective breeding, ocean liner service, strategy. So PV4 has a lot of options now. He could go for the Republic, but instead decides to go for the conmon, leaving him maybe better prepared for the military options. And he has a lot of civil actions anyway, so he will go for that, and then he will go for the ocean liner service, but as you can see now, he can't finish it this turn already, which is a bit costly for him maybe at least. Instead he will go for the organized religion, allowing him to upgrade his religion, and with that not having any happy face issues. He could have also gone for the team sport, so it's interesting that he actually goes for the organized religion instead, especially with Pierre in the game, but maybe he just wanted to have the option to just upgrade the religion and put all of the other population elsewhere, or maybe he didn't like it to give the Republic for one civil action for me, because with the Acropolis I can very cheaply go for it, and maybe it makes it just more easily possible for me to go for the Republic, and then maybe the selective breeding and also the strategy or something like this, so that is maybe another reason, just letting the Republic stay on 2 civil actions for me. PV4 has corruption, which is not ideal, but he can finish the ocean liner service quite cheaply the next turn with the engineering genius. Also, at least didn't seed yet, so the Reign of Terror is not out yet, and there's a chance that maybe it is in the next event, and maybe I don't have to lose a population. Then this turn, as you can see, I will go for the selective breeding. I could maybe go for the Republic this turn, but then I basically have to take the strategy, and after going for Republic and selective breeding and some units, I don't have that much science left, so going for the strategy is actually not that easily possible, and if I don't go for it quickly, I could definitely get into a bit of trouble with losing the strength from the theocracy, being down to 2 military actions. So while it is quite cheap to go for it, and it could be quite nice to have more civil actions, I instead rather wanted to wait for an H3 government form, and this turn I just went for 2 selective breeding upgrades, because that potentially gives me the option to increase my population at the next turn, and if the Reign of Terror isn't revealed, then I have a free population to lose. However, if the Reign of Terror is revealed, it actually gets very painful, because I have only expensive stuff at the moment, meaning I have to maybe lose a lab or maybe the rifleman and then just go for the fortifications tactic, but it still would all be a bit costly. But just keeping myself with an HA form so that I can lose that to the Reign of Terror, I think also wouldn't be ideal, because then it takes a long while until I can get new population going. So I just went for those upgrades, hoping that maybe the Reign of Terror isn't revealed yet, and that I can then increase my population at the next turn with the 2 upgrades that I was going for. And if I go for the Republic, taking the strategy and going for the selective breeding, I have only enough civil actions to go for 1 upgrade, meaning I can't increase my population at the next turn, so I just went for those 2 upgrades, hoping that maybe I have the chance to go for an H3 government form at some point. Then it's the end of my turn, and also we can maybe take a quick look at the overview, but I also had a very interesting draw here, because I draw actually the mechanized army tactic, and I have the necessary technologies for that. Maybe I have even a chance to get Marlene at the next turn, so this tactic could really help me a lot to defend myself, and I was very happy about it, drawing it that early and being able to count on it or to work with it. And If we take a look at the overview, we can see that I have quite a significant culture lead now, almost 50 culture. It will get bigger every turn. PV4 has the better economy, has a lot of civil actions, will have the ocean liner service, will have a lot of population. So he is not necessarily forced into military. Maybe he can do something peaceful, but it might, if he has some options, maybe he will go into the military. However, for that at least I have the mechanized army tactic now, so I was hoping that maybe I have a relatively good position, but PV4 has maybe the potential to do a lot of stuff. If he then gets a few impacts that are nice for him, it could already be a bit closer again. But for now, I was at least happy about my culture lead and the ability to maybe defend myself with having the mechanized army tactic now. PV4 seeds, sadly the Reign of Terror is revealed, which will definitely be somewhat painful at my turn. He will now finish the ocean liner service, increases his population 2 times, takes the breakthrough and the military theory with Darwin taking that one away from me, securing it for himself, and then he builds 1 cannon and develops the organized religion, and with that it's relatively clear that he at least wants to keep his military options open, taking that away from me, also securing it for himself in case I maybe want to go for Gandhi. He has not enough military actions to declare a war against me anyway. He's now at 11 strength, and I could maybe get a bit threatening, but at least I have this tactic to work with. Now it is my turn, and here I make the decision to seed the impact of agriculture into the deck, which could maybe be a mistake. I kind of wanted to keep both fortifications and mechanized army in the hand for now, and also the colonization card, meaning if I don't seed it now I can't that easily seed it later on, but maybe I could have also just thrown the fortifications tactic away. But maybe if the game doesn't get too military heavy and actually PV4 tries some peaceful out, it could maybe be nice to have a strong tactic where I only need to develop 1 technology. So I thought I will just seed it into the deck now. I won't get stronger this turn anyway, and there are some annoying events, but I was willing to push. However, there is actually quite an annoying event revealed, and maybe I should have just not pushed. Maybe not seeding the impact of agriculture at all could be fine, because it's only 3 culture for seeding. However, PV4 could maybe be out of yellow tokens at some point, and then maybe if he doesn't find the time and resources to build even an additional farm, maybe it could actually turn out to be quite a strong impact. So I think it is quite nice to have it in the deck, but now sadly there will be another painful event revealed, and that is the pestilence, meaning that I have to lose now even 2 things, and all of those things will be very costly. I can't really lose any farm. I also don't think I can't really lose any mine, so I basically have to at least lose 1 lab, and then either a second lab or maybe the rifleman. And at the end I will indeed lose a rifleman and 1 lab, because with going for fortifications or mechanized army I don't really need this rifleman. I mean, the 3 additional strength could still potentially be nice, but no. So that was quite painful. Losing the lab might also cost me some science with the Acropolis when I go for an H3 government farm potentially. So yeah, definitely quite painful for me to lose 2 populations, but no, that was the risk with not having my food solved earlier, with not taking the irrigation, which I had a chance to take 2 times. But no. At least I have some food production going. I will now get population out also at the next turn. I built 1 cannon, leaving myself at just enough strength to defend myself against a potential aggression. And then, as you can see, I will take Marlene, and I will also take the modern infantry. There's Gandhi coming down the row, but first of all there's maybe a small chance that if I don't go for Marlene Dietrich, maybe PV4, if he has drawn some strong military things, could deny him from me. Don't want to go for him myself for 3 civil actions, because PV4 has the military theory, and even though it makes it more difficult, it's still possible for him to go for a war, and I think Marlene Dietrich might be the better help anyway with those strong tactics. She might help me to get an additional one going, and as you can see, then I actually took the modern infantry away, meaning that PV4 can't go for the defensive army in its not outdated form, also removing the possibility to go for quite some H3 tactics from him. I have 1 copy of mechanized army. If he doesn't have the other one, he now can't go for any full H3 tactics, and yeah, so I just I think to limit his military options, I took the modern infantry and missed out on the reserves, or maybe some other stuff that I could have done. I could have maybe also gone for the strategy, but I at this point made the decision to go for the denial. I will draw 2 cards, 1 war and 1 aggression. PV4 will seed, and the event revealed is the Grime Wave, which was seeded by me. I will now lose a blue token and also 3 culture, but it's maybe not too bad. PV4 has now a lot of unhappy workers, but that allows him actually to go for Mandela. He will then, with the discount of Darwin, take the Bro Spots, elects Mandela, goes for the Bro Spots, builds one, goes for one upgrade to Organized Religion, and then takes the reserves. With that, he produced some culture now, has a lot of civil actions, but with going for the Bro Spots, he is also getting more strength, meaning he is maybe also setting himself up to still be threatening, even with having missed out on modern infantry. Maybe he's hoping to get the tanks, or maybe he, with having that much population, could actually just work with the outdated defensive army, or maybe he has something like positional army or entrenchments and can work with the outdated form of that. So also for potential military plans, going for this Bro Spots play could also still be quite valuable, and he is at least willing to build one additional warrior using a free military action, maybe signaling that he definitely thinks about or wants to prepare a little bit for potential military plans. This turn I can't really use my politics phase. I will increase my population, and there's now a big strength gap between me and PV4, and PV4 is actually already for the next turn a bit threatening. He could declare war potentially, go for the military theory, play the patriotism, and then maybe go for one warrior and then even another outdated army, which would be a bit of strength. At least it would require a bit of distraction from his side, but he could potentially do it. So this turn I have to ideally prepare myself against an aggression, but also maybe as good as I can against a war. Maybe I played it actually a bit too risky this turn. I mean, I knew that PV4 has some war potential, but I will now this turn take first of all the tanks away. Both the tanks and modern infantry were revealed after PV4's turn and landed in 2 civil actions for me, so that's a bit unfortunate for him that I have the chance to take those cards away from him so cheaply, unless he maybe has some other plans anyway. But now with taking the tanks away, I make sure that even less options are available for him, or outdated modern army is now off the table. Potential mobile artilleries or something like that, even though then maybe he wouldn't have built this additional warrior. So I take the tanks away, limiting his options even more to go for potential wars. And then I will actually use Bach for this upgrade to get even more culture production. But that one maybe was a bit too greedy, because I don't need the happy face now from the opera once I go for Marlene. And as you can see now, when I go for... No, actually it's not. The resource difference is maybe not that big, because I made a bit of a mistake in my thinking process when taking a look at the review. I thought that I have now just not enough to go for another army, but of course I would need one more unit. So it does make a difference, and then maybe it's fine to just get even more 4 culture production going. That will be maybe 12 additional culture before the end of the game, so even I miss out on 2 resources. Maybe those 2 resources could make a difference. It is quite a bit of culture that I would miss out on if I don't go for this, so I think it's maybe fine. And for the next turn, I could potentially get hit by a war. I have at least the possibility to threaten 1 air force, which would put me at 33 strength, so PV4 has to be afraid of that. And maybe, but he could still try to go for a war, and maybe hope that the air forces don't appear, but the war won't be too big with him just going for outdated defensive armies, and he has a big cultural gap that he has to overcome. So maybe he won't go for a war, maybe could try to make it even bigger. Of course, I can then maybe go for more armies at some point, or take air forces and also prepare myself better. And also an advantage of getting stronger is that PV4, if there's a strength event on top, which definitely could be, maybe can't really seed at his next turn. And I think for him to win this game, maybe he needs to pull off a war, but in addition to that, maybe he also needs to seed some impacts. And if he doesn't want to go for a war at his next turn, or maybe doesn't have the option for it to, because he doesn't have drawn one, then it would be very strong for him to seed an impact. And in case there's a big strength event on top, that might make things a bit annoying for him. So yeah, I think with that it's also quite nice for me to get stronger, elect Marlene now, and of course also be now not in danger of an aggression any longer. Because I could have maybe kept Bach and instead build a cannon, and then but not really, because then I can't threaten to go for an air force with this tactic. So I think going for Marlene Dietrich in this tactic is quite strong, and then I made a decision to take those tanks away. I draw one card, the impact of population. That's quite a bad one for me, with PvP4 having 3 irrigations in the ocean liner service. He won't use his politics phase, maybe meaning that there could be a strength event on top. He will increase his population a bunch of times, and then he will just take a lot of resources, also the urban growth, develops the military theory, builds a warrior, builds another warrior, plays the resources using his actions very efficiently, building another cannon using his military actions efficiently as well. And yeah, with that, he maybe has the plan to go for war at the next turn. He has now almost 3 outdated tactics. Actually, he has just enough resources, as we can maybe see at the end of his production. He has 8 resources saved up, and then another 15 in his hand, meaning 23, which is actually just enough to go for 3 air forces and a warrior. However, he can't really go for this, unless maybe there's an event that could help him, but I won't push at my turn. Because I think if I didn't miscount, he has 1 civil action missing to actually achieve going for all of this, because he would need to play all of those cards, and maybe from his perspective there is some hope that he can do it, but only if a copy of Air Force, I think, will be available for 1 civil action for him. If not, then his strength potential is a bit less, but he could still go for maybe just 3 Air Forces, putting him, I think, at somewhat like 50 strength, so I have to be a bit careful, and yeah, might get hit with a war at my next turn. However, I do get quite a bit lucky here, because there is a very strong card on the road. It helps me quite a lot to defend myself, and that is the military buildup, allowing me to get 8 additional resources going. First of all, I will increase my population this turn, and yeah, then I tried out some different turns, but I think it's relatively clear what I have to do. I will take the air forces and the military buildup, building 1 cannon, and now I have 18 resources for the next turn, and with that I will be able to build 2 more units and an air force, going for 1 more tactic with Marlene and 1 more with the air forces, putting myself at, I think, at 51 strength, which maybe PvP4 could potentially overcome. However, with this copy of air forces staying on 2, he can't go for the 3 or for the 3 outdated armies with all having 1 air force. So no, but he might still be able to go for maybe a bit more than 50. He probably has some different options how he can exactly do it, but it definitely won't be a big war, and it will be the last chance for him to go for war. If he doesn't go for war, maybe goes for an aggression, which I'm not prepared for right now, then it's maybe just not enough to close the culture gap. He has now done some investment into the military. Before that, maybe if he did a lot for impact preparation, culture production, maybe could have overcome the gap peacefully, but it could have been very challenging, and only if he maybe has really some strong impacts to work with, and then maybe gets a strong wonder. But now he has committed, so if he doesn't get a war going, I think my chances to win are very big, and with the military buildup, I'm luckily able to threaten to go for 2 more tactics, and with that, a big war is basically off the table, and I'm not sure if there is even a way for PvP4 to get more than 51 strength. I will draw 2 cards now, and I will actually draw 2 wars, meaning there is maybe also the chance that PvP4 actually doesn't have a war left, which could maybe be, because as you can see at this point he actually resigned the game, and maybe with seeing that either he can't pull off a war with enough strength, or maybe just doesn't have a war, maybe at this point he didn't see an out for him, and at this point made the decision to resign. And yeah, I think in this game things in H3 went basically perfect for me. I had the strong culture lead, got the mechanized army tactic to defend myself, got a chance to take both modern infantry and tanks away for only 2 civil actions, with PvP4 never having had a chance to grab it, and then at the last point where PvP4, even just with going for outdated defensive armies, still managed to threaten about 50 strength, I then got a military build up. Without that I wouldn't have been able to go for 2 more armies, then a war again would have been possible, if PvP4 had 1 in hand, and yeah. So in the game against Marta Becher, I think things went a bit unfortunate for me in H3, with him getting maybe this modern army tactic in a wall relatively early, and then me not finding any way to stop it. Maybe he could have done something different in this game, but this game is completely the opposite. I get all the perfect things to deny the war very nicely, and then with my culture lead at the end, I will just win the game, and with that, keep my chances alive to maybe still finish at the third position at those World Championship finals. No, so it was in H2 maybe a bit weird because both PV4 and I had some things that we waited for, and all of them were actually very late. It was quite problematic for me that both the Ocean Nano service and selective breeding were quite late, but of course there could have been also the risk that PV4 has a nice possibility to take even away both of them, and at least I could go for some food production, but then the Reign of Terror and the Pestilence really hit me quite a bit. I think Gutenberg did a lot of work this game with going for those upgrades, and then just going for Bach, big culture reduction, using the Acropolis. At the end, with getting those nice abilities to defend myself, was just enough to win this game. And now that this game is finished, we can also take a quick look at the standings before the last game of the tournament. It was the last game for PV4, so he will finish the finals now at 19 points at the second place, so quite a strong performance by him. And with the last game, there is still something on the line now. If I manage to win this last two-player game against E5, I would be able to finish this tournament at least at the third place, which I would be very happy about. But now, for that, of course, I need to win the game, and I hope you are very excited to see the outcome of this tournament. And I also hope it was an interesting game for you to watch. And thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.